Hey, thanks for watching. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about muscle contractions and kind of the mechanics that go into that. It's something I've been focusing on the past couple days, and I just wanted to share what I've learned so far. So I hope you enjoy this video. So I was looking into muscle contractions and the neuroreceptors and what's really going on with the actin and the myosin. So I wanted to go into a little bit about that. I'm not going to go into all the details, but just kind of a grand overview, something that I've learned to help me study for this MCAT. So first of all, you have the nerve that innervates the muscle, that sends the signal, takes that signal from your brain to the muscle to actually make the effort happen. And so you have the sodium working down the action potential of the nerve, and then you get to the end, you have the ACH, the acetylcholine, released into the synaptic cleft, and then once that gets into the cleft, it's binding to the acetylcholine receptor. It's actually a nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. And what's happening is you release the action potential that goes down the T-tubule to the sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle. And once it gets down to there, you trigger a release of calcium ions. Now these calcium ions will trigger more calcium ion release, and it dumps into the cell. Now the calcium ion will actually attach to your troponin as a receptor that once that's bound to that calcium, it changes the shape of your tropomyosin. Now the tropomyosin is that strand-like coil that goes around your actin, and it actually uncovers the binding site on the actin. Now your myosin will actually attach to that binding site in the actin, and when it attaches, it pulls the actin filament, and both of those kind of ratchet across each other, and that creates the muscle contraction. So now I want to talk about the myosin and the ATP, and what causes this myosin to actually move, and at what point the ATP is binding and what point it's being released. So ATP binds to the myosin after contraction and release from the actin. So it releases, ATP is bound to the myosin, and then ATP is used. Now this is a little different because the ADP and the extra phosphate group is still attached to this myosin when it's cocked. So the energy from breaking that bond is used, and the myosin is in a cocked, ready position to go. Now, once it starts going, it goes up and attaches itself to the actin, and that phosphate group will come off. And then it'll go through what's called a power stroke, and the ADP will fall off as well. And then once it's finished with that power stroke, then it detaches and a new ATP will bind to that myosin to get it reset to go again. Now what's interesting about muscles is it's not just a single movement and then the muscle moves back and then it's done. The calcium will be bound to that troponin, and so as long as the binding site is open on the actin and the tropomyosin is out of the way, that strand that's covering the binding site, as long as that's out of the way and the calcium is still bound, this action will keep happening over and over again, where ATP will bind to the myosin and the myosin will bind to the actin, and it will do this power stroke over and over again. And if you think of it like legs on a centipede, where they're all going at different times, they're just moving all down in different times. So that on this filament, the actin and the myosin are constantly connecting, disconnecting, being engaged, and moving that muscle in till that calcium is detached from the troponin and the actin binding site is covered up. So this will just keep happening over and over, where the myosin will attach, do the power stroke, detach, reset, and then do it again, and it'll just keep pulling that muscle in until the calcium is off. So then when the calcium disengages, it disconnects, and the troponin no longer has a calcium bound to it, again the tropomyosin changes shape, it pulls back over in front of the binding site of the actin, and the muscle contraction stops for that iteration.